Welcome back to another episode of Espresso Chat, where we break down the topics shaping the life sciences industry today. I'm your host, Casey Chestnut, and I'm joined today by two fantastic guests. First, our resident life sciences expert, Massimo Crudeli, and for the first time in Espresso Chat history, we're here to welcome Juanita Schoen, Senior Engagement Manager at Columbus. Thank you both for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Today we're talking about what we're calling the 5K tech stack myth, the idea that lean, low-cost systems are enough for growing biotech companies. We'll explore when that approach starts creating compliance and scalability risks, and how organizations can build the right operational foundation without over-engineering too early. Massimo, Juanita, thanks again for being here. Let's jump on in. So Massimo, my first question I'll direct towards you. Why do so many early-stage biotech companies delay investing in operational systems?
I guess I'll give you a short answer first. I think that it's because founders, they are optimizing for survival of the company, especially in the very early stages. Founders, invest, or they measure, every single dollar against scientific progress and runaway and products. They want to see data, milestones, evidence that the science work. The operational infrastructure rarely feels a competitive advantage for these companies. They think they can survive with spreadsheets, with QuickBooks, with maybe some standalone solution like a LIMS system. And that seems to be, okay, because the company is apparently simple. The problem, I think, is that the biotech industry is fundamentally different from any other technology industry. So the operational complexity arrives early because those companies operate in a highly regulated environment. It's very data intensive. So the decision that these kind of companies make in the first 12 to 24 months about platform infrastructure, that create a foundation for the future clinical development, manufacturing, quality management, regulatory compliance, and so on and so forth. This seems, for most of the executives, this is a problem, is a future problem. In reality, they are making unconsciously long-term architectural decisions. And the cost of this decision is just not visible to them yet.
Juanita, do you have any thoughts on that as well?
Yeah, I really loved what Massimo shared, and I just want to build on that and just say again, with that focus being on the science, the doctors, the researchers, also in medical device, it could be the engineers. That is where all the money is going. That's where they want to spend their focus, as Massimo said. And so the risk of that is that they really don't know what's coming. To Massimo's point, they don't know what's coming. So I think this is a time, what can we do about it? I would say investing in some education for those founders of the company, for those researchers, for those product developers, like in the beginning, kind of let them know what's coming, start to build structure around those important architectural decisions, even if they don't need those systems yet. Just give them a little bit of a roadmap of how they're going to grow and scale and be compliant in the future. So I think the more that they know, they can even begin thinking about those decisions earlier.
I like that, which kind of brings me in to my next question for you, Juanita. At what stage does a lean startup stack begin at compliance and scalability risks? And what are the first warning signs?
So really, when they begin their clinical trials, that's where they're really starting to expand the science, gather a lot more data, and that's where they start introducing some compliance risk. If they're using uncontrolled Excel spreadsheets, for example, or access databases to collect this data, it is subject to the FDA's mandate for good clinical practices. And so, no, they're not selling it in a commercial sense yet, but they may not realize that some of these disparate data sources are actually bringing risk to the program. So, for example, perhaps there's manual mistakes made in the collecting of that data, and the reporting of that data may be inconsistent across different sources. So they're also introducing risk of not getting the good answers that they need from their systems. I'd love to hear what Massimo has experienced in that realm.
I totally agree. I think the transition into clinical operation is really the inflection point. And I think one big misconception in the industry is that the compliance risk begins during an FDA inspection. In reality, it begins well before that, when critical data can no longer be consistently traced, governed, and defended. If you think about, reconciling data across multiple systems, or multiple version of the truth because you have different file versions. Audit trail is very difficult to reconstruct. Visibility relies on spreadsheets. So those are signs that the organization might still appear functional, but the underlying architecture is definitely fragile.
Agree.
Good to know. Massimo, my next question. What are the hidden costs of waiting too long to introduce operational structure?
I guess most of the executive, and that's the nature of the beast, they evaluate the visible cost of technology. In reality, the hidden cost is where the economic impact, of course. You have the operational inefficiency. The business grows, the employees spend more time trying to reconcile information and less time making decisions, which, by the way, opens the door to, FDA observation if you cannot reconcile information properly. Manual work scales, linearly with the complexity of operations. And then there is the compliance risk. You try to retrofit controls, validation, electronic signature, auditability, and that is extremely expensive. It's more expensive to retrofit compliance than designing compliance into the environment from the beginning. And then you have, of course, the cost of re-platforming, basically changing platform. Right. At some point, these organizations, they outgrow the lightweight technology stack they are running a business on. And then you have data migration, process redesigning, validation, retraining, plus business disruption. Okay. And typically, business doesn't stop. So you have to deal with these elements typically during a critical clinical or commercial milestones. And then there is, of course, the time to market risk. I guess if you delay 1 or 2 months in manufacturing readiness, clinical execution, or regulatory preparation, that might cost significantly more than the technology investment would have cost you at the beginning. So I think it's really important to think 2, 3, 4 years ahead and build a platform for that company rather than building an infrastructure for the company that is, for the startup that is at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Juanita, what are your thoughts on this?
It really resonates with me because I think having a staged and strategic plan for building that finance system, building your core financials and other things, and getting those controls in early in a MVP type approach, it can be very palatable from a cost perspective, but it lays the groundwork for compliance and for that control and that future growth that you want when you go to commercialization. And there's many things that are happening in those early stages, that are around managing the clinical trial cost, for example, managing your subcontractors, your clinical research organizations, those kind of things, your clinical supply 3PL that you're working with. So I think there's a lot of benefits to putting some of those functionality in an early ERP in those stages. And I just have to say too, I really lived through this as an IT clinical program manager for one of the companies I worked at. They were just at that exact stage, and they had a plethora of Excel spreadsheets, access databases where all the data lived, and we had to spin up a validation SWAT team to go forth and track down all these spreadsheets and migrate that data very carefully once we'd verified it to validated systems that weren't always ERP. For example, there was a adverse event system and adverse events that were being tracked in an Access database. So that had to be remediated. And as Massimo said, that's very, very costly to do after the fact. So.
That makes sense. Well, so many early stage biotech companies, they worry that an ERP is too much too soon. How can they introduce this operational structure without over-engineering their systems?
I think that's where, again, coming together with the founders, with the business leads, the executives, and really agreeing that we're going to have a plan and we're going to implement some kind of governance where we want to make decisions centrally that are going to affect the longevity growth of the company and also make sure we reduce risk, regulatory risk. And so having them all buy in at the beginning, form governance bodies, either using their existing corporate structure, but adding that IT infrastructure and data controls and compliance discussions to their topics and their meetings, in addition to covering where are we with the science, where are we with the clinical trials, where are we with the regulatory submission, really actively managing that plan and the growth trajectory for the infrastructure and the systems. And I'd love to hear what Massimo's could add.
I agree with you. At the same time, I also agree with the biotech, early stage biotech company. A full ERP is probably too much too soon for them. But at the same time, I think that the question they should ask themselves is not really, shall we go with a spreadsheet or a massive ERP implementation? There's nothing in between. Today, there is a middle path. We can implement ERPs in a modular, granular way. So we can implement a small number of foundational capabilities to create, that kind of a technology stack without creating a technological bureaucracy. So a company can focus on finance, supply chain visibility, inventory control, basic quality and compliance governance, of course, master data management. That gives them the foundation to build for the future. At the same time, keep the configuration and the cost light enough for the early stage. We are not building a Fortune 500 architecture. That's not the point. That's not the objective. It's really to establish and put in place a scalable platform that can grow with the business without costly reworks in the future.
So on your talk of scalable platforms, how can startups balance this speed, cost control, compliance, readiness as they prepare for future growth?
I think, most of the companies, they see this objective as competing priority, right? There is an operational foundation that can support speed and flexibility, compliance, and minimal bureaucracy and cost control and minimal systems. There are modern life sciences platforms, especially if they are focused on life sciences, that can allow organizations to standardize core processes while maintaining agility. That is what you need. You need standard core processes. You want to create reliable data, control processes, visibility across the organization. That kind of accelerate the decision making within the company rather than slow it down. So the real question I think that those companies should ask is more like, if your critical program succeeds faster than expected, can your operation infrastructure keep up? If the answer is no, because there are too many Excel files, manual operations, you rely on standard operating procedures, you have too many disconnected system, kind of black holes in the information flow, well, you are under-investing in readiness, and you probably need to move to a different platform. Juanita, what do you think?
I agree, and I think at this stage of their development, not only that can these companies look to various partners or ERP partners to advise them what's available in the beginning to them, and how can they get there in an affordable way but plan for the future. But I'd also encourage them to join the technology user groups and learn from other companies that have either done it the right way or done it the hard way, and just hear from other people in their same space what's best practice, what worked, what didn't. We always encourage our customers to do that as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's great. That's great advice. Well, Massimo, Juanita, thank you both for sharing your insights and helping us unpack how growing biotech companies can build the right operational foundation without sacrificing agility. And thank you to everyone for joining us on this episode of Espresso Chat. If you're interested in learning more about how life sciences organizations are modernizing operations while staying agile, scalable, and compliant, you'll find the links below to explore our solutions, as well as connect with Massimo and Juanita. Until next time, thanks for watching. Thanks, Massimo. Thanks, Juanita.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.